Hello everybody, I'm back again with another comic book review, and this time I'm finally giving in, going onto the shelf, and picking up a book that has been kind of intimidating to review. Basically anything by Neil Gaiman and some of those other big names like Alan Moore. I'm just like, oof, that's gonna be a little tough to review that, but finally doing one of them. And it is Black Orchid by Neil Gaiman and Dave McKean. First thing you may notice, there's a couple variant different trade covers for this, so don't worry if this doesn't look familiar, because honestly this isn't the cover I recognized at all. You can read the whole story in 3 issues, except they're kind of oversized issues. They're actually bound, you know, kind of like trade paperbacks, but they're really thin. And they're super cheap. Honestly, it might even be cheaper to buy those 3, like, online, because they're usually like $1 or $2 each instead of buying the trade, which, this thing's list price is $20. A friend got this for me as a gift, very awesome gift, because I've been meaning to read it, and I'm really glad I did. It's pretty cool. So, I'm going to tell you all about it, because I think this is a really awesome comic and does a lot of interesting things. So, first thing I want to say about this is, I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure this is the second comic that Gaiman and McKean have done together. The first one was Violent Cases, which I also have. It's down here. I'll probably review it eventually. Really cool comic, but this one is a really big jump from where they used to be. That was like a total independent story that they just created together, trying to basically experiment with comics. It was really cool. This first one here, or if I'm correct at all, I'm just assuming, this one is done with DC. If you're familiar at all with Black Orchid, more than likely not. If you're reading this, you're probably going to be wanting this because of Gaiman and McKean, not because of Black Orchid. Black Orchid was, I don't know if she still is, a DC superhero heroine, I guess. From what I know from reading this, you really don't need to know anything about her because you kind of figure it out. It's basically kind of hard to kill her. She's kind of like this plant lady. That's it. You really don't need to know anything. So, she's kind of similar. Like, they use a lot of DC, like, what is it? A lot of different characters, a lot of different types of DC worlds, like the Swamp Thing world kind of carries into this, Batman carries into this a bit, and the real point that I think Gaiman and McKean were trying to make is that you can take those canny comics, or those books that people say are just kind of embarrassing the medium, and you can make them really good. And that's what they do with this. And it's kind of embarrassing on DC's part. Some of the things that Gaiman and McKean actually do in here that DC doesn't stop and go, oh shoot, we should probably, you know, let our writers do crazy things and do whatever they want and actually, you know, make names for themselves on their stories, and let the artists, you know, go nuts and just, you know, make some really cool art, and then let them go together and actually communicate with each other and try and make the best story they can together. That's what they need to do. Now, the whole premise of this book is on breaking one really, really big common thing that people don't like doing in superhero comics. And the art is already phenomenal. If I turn this around, it's not ever going to do this any justice. I'm just going to jump to page 6 here of the first issue and read just a little snippet. Basically, this is going to give you an idea of what's going to happen through the whole series. I guess if you call this a series, the whole trade. This is the complete story, if you're wondering, the whole story. And the whole thing is kind of based on this one idea. What's happened is, I don't even know what her name was. It was something Thorn, whatever. It was some, you know, some canny DC thing where everyone's name, oh, my last name just happened to be Thorn, and I'm a plant superhero, that kind of stuff, but you don't even need to know it. So, honestly, doesn't really matter. So, she is, like, pretending to be some secretary in a villain's, like, headquarters of some sort, and they catch her. and the guy in charge is basically talking to her while they've got her, you know, tied up with like some titanium cord or something in a chair, and what he says is pretty interesting, and it's kind of the whole idea of Gaiman breaking what superhero comics were. He says, "No, it's okay, don't tell me. I know how much you super people like to keep your little secrets. Hey, you know something? I've seen, you know, the movies, James Bond, and all that. I've read the comics. So, you know what I'm not gonna do? I'm not gonna lock you up in the basement before interrogating you. I'm not going to set up some kind of super complicated laser beam death trap, then leave you alone to escape. That stuff is so dumb. But you know what I am gonna do? I'm going to kill you. Now." And that's exactly what he does. He kills her. There. She dies that quick. And the rest of the story is basically about kind of adding a little bit more depth to her, I kind of want to say mythology, or whatever species she really was. She kind of lived with like a group of other plant girl sisters, as they call them, in this greenhouse, and a doctor character, I believe he was a doctor, who kind of tends to them, and he's, I guess, the partner in crime of whatever the original Black Orchid was. And now a new one awakens from there, and she doesn't understand what's going on, and this whole story is really following her. And a couple different characters, mainly the villains who have killed the Black Orchid, realize that there's the other ones, and they're trying to go after them. The only other ones that are really in this story is an older one and then a really young one. And it's kind of like a neither of us know what's really going on, but it's still a parental thing. She's trying to take care of her little sister as a parental thing, so it's kind of it's interesting. Her, as in the old Black Orchid's ex-husband, I believe, he's kind of like on a drunken rampage, angry, trying to get back at her, so he becomes a huge player in this. And there's really so many different things that pop up in this that aren't ever used. They're just ideas that are really great ideas and don't ever get used in superhero comics today. It's not really fair to say about all of them. Some of them do take elements from this, because this just really is kind of old. Let me see. Appears to be from the 70s, if I'm seeing this right. That doesn't sound right. 89, yeah, I was gonna say, what the heck is that? Oh, that's copyrighting a song. That was totally wrong. It's like, there's no way it's the 70s. Yeah, early 90s, late 80s, basically, is what we're looking at here. Late 80s, actually, for the single issues. This trade, though, early 90s. So, there's a lot of things that have happened in here that really should have been thought of and taken into account for like the New 52 and stuff like that. The DC's still kind of stuck on a problem of trying to hit like the same audience over and over again, and they don't seem to understand what people really want. I've got a lot of issues with DC, and it really takes a good creative team to make up for all the problems that they give you. And this is a really cool book because it does those things. So if you kind of if you don't really like superhero books, and you want to see one done right, this is really cool. This really has nothing to do with fighting crime. This really has nothing to do with like giant enemies or, you know, villains and stuff like that. This is just an interesting story where if you were actually in one of those crazy worlds, which this is the Black Orchid world, what would really happen? And that's what I find really interesting about this book. I'm also giving no credit to how amazing Dave McKean's art is. I can't even flip through some of these pages, and I really want to make sure they show up on here, because he goes from like sketching collage art to really, really refined paintings, and sometimes I can't even tell what he did to get some of this art. And aside from just the art, I mean, the story is like intertwined so nicely with it. Dave McKean and Neil Gaiman are just a perfect match together. And that's what I really want to see for a great superhero story. The artist and the writer really need to mesh really well, and they do perfectly in this. These guys just do really well together. I don't know, is it really just me who wants really great superhero comics? I mean, I'd be interested in it if you could do really well. You need to have a really great artist who really understands the writer, and the writer really needs to understand what you need to do to fix the genre already. Because there's so many overused things. Like, I mean, I don't care to see the New 52 Justice League all getting together and you're gonna beat up Darkseid because he's just gonna show up, and Batman's gonna fight Superman because that's gonna sell comics. And stupid stuff like that. I don't care about stuff like that. I don't understand how people care about stuff like that. This is interesting. This can do so many more things than some of that New 52 crap can't. And I really want to hear what you guys think about stuff like this, because I want to know that this is not just me. So, I mean, if you've got anything else to say about Black Orchid, or have any requests for any Neil Gaiman and Dave McKean books in the future, let me know down in the bottom and I can review those for you. Or if you have anything to say about the New 52 comics, because I think DC really didn't catch on to what I think succeeded in this book. But, probably didn't really ramp its sales up, because like I said, it's a really cheap book to grab, and I mean, not a lot of people really go for that book, so it's kind of a bummer, and it's a downside to it. So I want to make sure I can shed some light on it. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I will see you guys in the next comic review.